What's up, my martial arts fanatics? Welcome back to System Breakdowns. As always, I'm Coach Greg, and today we're breaking down Magomed Ankalaev, who is just a terror in the light heavyweight division. He's 9-1-1 in the UFC. For the fights that he did lose and draw, the Jan Blachowicz fight was very close, and as far as like the early fight against Paul Craig, he had basically been mopping the floor with Paul Craig until he happened to get caught in a triangle at the end. But for the most part throughout his career, he's just kind of destroyed everybody. And he's got a great style of counter-striking combined with that, classic Dagestani-style wrestling. And it's made him really dangerous inside the ring. So we're going to break that all down today. But, this is a guy who not only is he a master of sport and Sambo and an amateur MMA, has all these MMA championships before getting the UFC, which gave him an amazing skill set. But, these wins that he's had have been over some very tough opponents. And I think that when you start talking about, in the near future, him getting title shots, whether against Yuri Prochazka or it's Jamal Hill or whoever else might be in that position, I think that he's going to stand a very good chance of becoming the next light heavyweight champion. So that being said, we're going to break down today what's made him so successful. So stay tuned. Let's start getting into Magomed Ankalaev. All right, let's get right into it. The first thing I want you to understand is that his ultimate goal throughout his whole fight is going to be to set up his primary weapon, and that is his lead right hook. He's a Southpaw fighter who uses, like a lot of Southpaws, a lot of similar tactics. The one thing that he doesn't do that I would like to see him do more is a lot of outside foot position fighting. I think not dominating that space is what cost him some trouble in the Jan Blachowicz fight, forced him to fight more orthodox. By maintaining this position, it gives you access to the legs. I'd like to see him kick the leg a little bit more. But other than that, he does have a very strong southpaw game with a lot of dominant left foot kicking and a lot of the stuff that you kind of see out of that top hand position and stuff like that. We'll talk about that shortly. But his primary weapon is going to be that right hook. He's quick with it. He's very accurate with it. And he loves to set this up. This is why he gets kind of a reputation for sometimes for being a boring fighter, because he's a counter-striker, and most counter-strikers kind of get this reputation because it's a lot of sit back and wait for them to come in to throw their shot. Now, what he does to set up that shot is what is important, and that's what you should be paying attention to when you watch him. Now, to get to this, first of all, the first thing he likes to do is, like I said, he's a southpaw fighter. He likes to press the action, and he wants to move them back. Moving guys back behind the black line has been really helpful for him because, one is it allows him to dictate the space. And what he wants to do is stay just at the edge of punching range where guys feel like, if I really commit to it, I can just reach him. And that's the space he's going to dominate. He does a lot of good ring control to get himself there. But what's nice about this is that when he attacks them, they have nowhere to go. But then when they attack him, he has all the room in the world to back up. If in the event they do back him all the way up to the other side of the cage, it doesn't happen very often, but if that happens, you're going to see a lot of head covering and a lot of rolling out left and right until he breaks free, catches a side, and then resets, and then starts to back them up behind the black line once again. Once he's here, like I said, his goal is to draw them in. What's nice about this range control is that from here, he doesn't have to reach to get to them. Instead, what he's going to do is make them reach to get to him so that he's going to start doing some probing techniques. And when they start to throw at him, they're going to put themselves at risk range. He doesn't have to do a lot to enter into their range to put himself at risk. Instead, he's going to put that burden on them. He presses them back, makes them feel a compulsion to start to get to him by probing. And he'll do some offensive techniques we'll talk about in a second, proactive stuff. But he's going to start doing a lot of stuff to really draw that in. And when they do, it's the right hook for days. Now, sometimes he'll punctuate and blitz off of that, and he'll do right hook, left cross, and then he'll punctuate this a lot of times with a kick. But generally he likes right hook, then it's right hook, left cross, followed by some sort of a kick. The two kicks he most likes to go to off of this is the left head kick, so pop, 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 or he goes for the leg kick, pop, pop, pop. That's usually the combination that you'll see him do when he decides to blitz. And the nice thing about him is he's so explosive. Man, is he dangerous from here. When he starts coming back at this, this right cross is super, super quick. And a lot of times what he's going to do is he does a lot of blocking with his left hand for anything that comes in. So he's going to be in here pawing, wait for it to come in, either block here or catch parry, and then pop, opens them up. Whether they're throwing their left, they get open here, throwing their right, they get open up. And what's nice is no matter what comes, he can come over top of it, quick block, and counter punch over and over again. And then he mixes up the pace so that he slows down the pace to a quick explosion. Slow down the pace, quick explosion. And when he comes in, he is a terror. Super explosive, very similar to what you see out of guys like Chandler. And what's nice about this pace control and the volume shift is that he slows it down, slow, 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 then to very explosive. The psychology of it is brilliant because he's in their face, explosive, very, very fast, high volume, exploding on top of them. Their back's against the wall, they have nowhere to go, and it leaves them going, oh crap, oh crap. And that's how he catches guys a lot of times. Draw them up, pop, pop, and explode back on them. That's a very dangerous combination, okay? Okay, so offensively, when he wants to be proactive, sometimes the battle is not so much hitting the counters. He's very good at doing that. And like I said, it's a very simple thing for him to hit over and over and over again. Sometimes the battle is in drawing out the counters. So as he backs guys up, what he likes to do is a lot of techniques that sometimes you'll see him throw stuff just to kind of get a reaction out of guys. A lot of probing in here just to try to pull out techniques, right? He's not actually trying to commit because he doesn't want to enter into their threat range. What he wants to do is give them a feeling like he's going to attack so that it feels like your turn. This is part of the psychology of fighting where a lot of times people feel like, okay, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. It's a habit we get into when we spar a lot. And so he's kind of playing on that by drawing on the sense that it's their turn to try to come at him because he's not coming to them. So it's their turn to come at him. So this is something you're going to see him do a lot from the outside. But then if they don't take the bait, or if he feels like he needs to start upping the pace of the fight, this is when he starts getting more aggressive. And what you'll see him do a lot from here is what I call attacks of opportunity. And essentially what he's trying to do is, by using the opportunism principle, he's going to throw things that do not put him at a lot of risk. He'll throw a quick jab and then get back out, right? He's not lingering there. His jab is very quick too. And he's back out, right? Once he throws the jab, he's immediately back out of range, not giving them a lot of time to respond or to hit him. He's not really staying in the pocket long enough to catch a lot back. And he's always ready to move back out, disengage, and go back to his right hook. He'll also throw a lot of kicks. Front kick to the body especially. This is his weapon, right? He loves going back to this, both sides, right? Bam! Over and over and over again. Throwing these roundhouse kicks to the body as well, but especially this left front kick. Why? Because it's also going to later on set up his head kick. It also makes it possible to start doing some range diversity and things like that. He'll also throw in, occasionally he'll throw in a leg kick. Once again, these are all attacks of opportunity where, bam, he's not going to really put himself at a lot of risk throwing this here, right? This front kick, he could just score points, start to break down their cardio, frustrate them, force them to feel like they have to really commit to him. Leg kick is the same thing. He's not really putting his head in the threat range. Every once in a while, a quick jab if they get too complacent. But he seems to focus mostly on the kicking. Then from there, you'll see this especially if you feel like he's maybe needs to like punctuate a round, or if he feels like he's maybe not down on a round because he seems to usually be on top. But if he feels like he needs to punctuate a round, or he feels like it's not going as well as he likes, this is when you start seeing him go for coming underneath the takedowns as well. And we'll talk about that in the next section. All right, let's talk about takedowns, takedown defense, and grappling a little bit. So the nice thing about takedowns is that he has a very high success rate because people forget he's a great wrestler. He doesn't overuse it, and I think that's one of the things I like about it is that by the time he goes for it, they've already forgotten about it, and he's already inside on him. And usually when you see him going for wrestling, one of a couple things has happened. It's usually because he feels like he's a little bit down and he wants to pick the fight back up and punctuate a round, or maybe he's gotten clipped and he wants to come inside. But most of the time it's because the fight is too close for him and he's like, let's get a couple rounds really sealed in the books now. So what he does is he's already back here, got him behind the black line. Most of the literal leg work is done because he's backed him up and he's been hitting him with this stuff. And then what he's going to do is he's going to throw these attacks, and then this time he's going to throw his jab, and when they go to throw back at him, he's underneath into his body clinch. Once he gets the body clinch, it's very easy for him to finish from here. He has a couple techniques that he likes to do off the cage. A couple things he does, he likes to really focus on keeping his shoulder under the chin, and he'll really get his underhooks, or at the very least get wrist control. Sometimes you'll see if they start going side to side, he'll put his hands on the hips as well to keep them from escaping sideways against the cage, and then he works back to her. And then from here, mostly what he likes to go for is trips, inside and outside trips. And I'm personally a big fan of this. It's very hard to defend, especially if you're keeping them pinned back and their shoulders pinned back against the cage. Pulling this out, add a little rotation, right to the ground they go. And he'll do the same thing on the inside, coming in here, right down to the ground. This is usually how he likes to punctuate his clinch work, is he gets him in here. Now sometimes he'll also throw in some nice knees and stuff too. He's had fights where he'll keep them against the cage a little bit, throwing a lot of knees, keeping them pinned up, and while they're tied up here, really focus on just attacking with these knees. Then once he softens them up, goes to that trip, takes him right down. Easy peasy. Why does it work? One, they forgot about wrestling. They thought this was just a striking fight. It's a great way of getting your takedowns, is if you spend a long time doing striking and then you punctuate around with it, or after doing a couple rounds of no takedowns, then all of a sudden, they're just not thinking about it. And that level change is really great. It's a nice way to get them back against the cage, and then from there, easy peasy. He will occasionally come down here and start hitting double legs and pull out the legs and stuff like that, but mostly he does seem to prefer going for the takedowns by trips. As far as takedown defense, this is very easy for him because he's got naturally great wrestling anyway, so it gives him an advantage. But a lot of his takedown defenses, as they come in, he's already looking for this right hook, and as they drop their head, he's looking for it here, and all he has to do then is swim his arm to the underhook right here. And a lot of times he likes to either frame in or start getting to this overhook here. Gets his hips back and turned away. As they come up, he starts to turn them back into the cage, and then he uses this offensively against them. Even if they happen to get him down, because he has the underhook and he can get his hips back, it's very easy for him to circle out. And then as they go, well, this isn't working, they start to stand up, and he turns them back to the cage. In other words, he's basically already in a position because he's so used to throwing this right hook that as the head drops, he's already looking to chase that head. And if he goes, oh, look, they've dropped down, it's very easy to swim underneath and then start getting his hips back as he circles. He likes to circle a lot into his techniques as he does this to try to create a response where he basically can try to hit him with the whizzer and stuff like that. He'll either underhook and just kind of turn his hips to throw him forward, or he comes in here and he rotates. So it's a lot of dropping, swimming to the underhook, hips back, and then rotating. That's mostly what he seems to rely on, and it works fantastically well. Very, very tough to take this guy down. I think in the UFC, I've only seen him taken down a couple times, and once he does get taken down, it's been at the end of a round, so we haven't seen him do a lot from the bottom. It's mostly just control guard and then like wait out 10 seconds. Once he gets guys on the ground, he's got a couple passes that he does, but really it's one pass in particular that he likes to do. Generally, he likes to kind of come to this 1 foot up, 1 foot down. And a lot of times what happens is, because of this, guys are going to instinctively go for the butterfly hooks. That's fine. This is what he wants. And what he'll do from here is this foot will come up, and he'll plant his hands on the ground. And a lot of times guys are trying to pull him down with collar ties and stuff like this. So he keeps his hands here, elbows in so that he can't get Kimuras and stuff like that. And he keeps 1 foot up, 1 foot down. And he just kind of like starts by not letting himself get posture broken. Then from here, what you're going to see a lot of times is he's going to get his underhook here in the body lock, gets his head underneath, and then I'm going to switch sides so you can see. As he starts breaking him down, this hand's going to start coming here, pushing this across, pushing the knee across, sliding the knee in, and then he starts getting to where he wants to be. Most of the time in the process, he's going to end up in half guard. It's just how he does it. And honestly, that's his preference anyway. So a lot of times what happens is, as he starts with this butterfly position, he starts getting the underhook here, getting his head under the chin to keep their shoulders pinned back, starts coming up here, uses this push here to start getting this across. As this happens, a lot of guys are coming across here and getting the half guard. This is fine for him. This is what he wants. His primary thing that he likes to do when he gets to top is get to half guard and just kind of posture up, and it's elbows. This is really what he is. Like, he might throw some at this side, but it's mostly just this lead hand elbow that he's going to stay here, keep him kind of pinned, and just start wailing on him. This is really what he's looking for. You will see him do some kind of like standard Dagestani tactics as well against the cage, where this is like classic Dagestani wrestling, where he'll like ride on a leg and he'll start to get on top of one leg here and pin this leg into place, keeping his head underneath, pinning them down with his head, and just punching like so. That's something that you'll also see a lot out of him. So a lot of leg ride, getting to the leg control, head pin, stuff like that. That's basically it. Like, as far as grappling goes, that's most of what we've seen out of him. He's mostly content to just get to a top half guard and just pound away at him. Alright guys, so today on System Breakdowns I want to add in something a little bit different, and I kind of want your comments to see what you guys think and if this is something you want to see me do in the future. And this is a room for improvement section, or like kind of like if I were to fight Ankalaev, this is the kind of stuff I would exploit. But I'm kind of mentioning it more from the standpoint of when you talk about system building, you have to look for where you have potential holes in your game and start to patch those. And he does have a couple of things that he is very susceptible to, but I think they're all things that can be patched. So let's kind of talk about this. The first one is obviously the leg kicks. This was a real problem for him in the Jan Blachowicz fight. Just getting his leg chopped off. So he wants to be able to back guys up, but I think that you can still do this and still work some outside position to the leg kick game. And there's a lot of things you can do, even if you don't want to do a lot of outside position, that can still make this very successful. You know that this leg is close, so maybe having it just practice stepping back here, right? I don't like checking. I'm not a big fan of it. But getting in the habit of doing step backs is a very nice way to do it. And because he's on this outside range, he should have a lot of response time to come in here and do this, to step back and counter leg kick. I think if he started doing that, that could really add a depth to his game. Personally, I would love to see him attack the legs more anyway from this outside position. If he's doing a lot of leg attacks, they're really going to feel a lot of compulsion to start coming at him and walk into that right hook of his. Because if they stay there, it creates more of a dilemma, and I think that he needs to add a little bit more dilemma to his game. He's good at picking them apart, right? He's landing some good shots and stuff like that, but if he started really chopping away at this leg with inside and outside leg kicks, I think guys are going to feel like they have no choice but to walk into his counters. And right now, guys are sitting back a lot on him. He doesn't feel like he has to press the action, so guys can kind of sit back on him. And in the Jan Blachowicz fight, it actually went to the step of Jan was able to just start chopping away at his legs. So the first thing I would do is add in some leg defense and some leg offense. I'm a big fan of adding a lot of leg kicks anyway. It adds that much more of a level change to your game, and he does do them occasionally, but he doesn't do them enough to have effect. And I'd like to see him do it enough where that leg threat from the outside here becomes a real problem for them that they're constantly having to contend with. And then when they start checking, it's going to open them up for that much more. Throwing a big cross down here, right? Throwing these kicks in here. It's another thing that I would add to his game. The second thing that I've noticed that's a real problem for him is overhand rights. This is a thing that he has had a lot of problems with. Nikita Krylov, Jan Blachowicz, that dude from South Africa, I can't remember his name, that he front kicked in the face. That dude caught him. Like, these overhands are a real problem for him. Why? Because he wants to come here. So when they start dropping their head out of range and that hand, more importantly, comes over top, he doesn't see it. It's out of his range, so he can't really defend it very well. And because he just likes to get his hand up to block stuff, he doesn't come all the way up. It's not necessary. He just comes up here. It means that he's a little bit susceptible to here. So he needs to start figuring out some solutions for when guys do start throwing overhands, whether it's close up a little bit more, whatever it is. That's a real flaw in his game that I've noticed guys have been able to exploit. And if I were going to fight him, I'd probably throw a bunch of them and just start, because when he gets hit, this is every time you've seen him get rocked in the ring, it's been from an overhand right. Every single time. And the third thing I want to talk about is this is the problem with being a one-trick pony. When you talk about an entire game that's built on throw a right hook, it does lead you some problems. Nikita Krylov was able to exploit this a little bit. I think he could have gone further with it. He started throwing a lot of this front kick to a jab and just covering up high against the hook, and was having a lot of good success until Ankalaev managed to start adjusting for that and started, I think he turned it to a takedown or something like that, if I remember. I can't remember exactly. But he started making adjustments for that game, and that's what he should do. Because why? He threw the same thing over and over again. So what he could have done that would have, I think, been more successful, when you got a guy who throws this hook a lot, This is a great entry. It forces them to contend with 2 levels, and then when he does throw the hook, what I think Krylov should have done was start to block here and come through with a left cross of his own. I think that would have been fantastic. If he just came in here, pop, pop, block, pop, he would have laid out Ankalaev, in my opinion. Either that or a left hook, just pop, pop. If he had started doing that, where he comes in here, he blocks as that hook comes in, and then throws the left down the pipe, I think if somebody starts figuring out that Ankalaev is a one-trick pony, this is what he's got to look forward to in his future. What does that mean? It means you have to have more diversity in the way that you do counters. Now, he does occasionally throw a cross, and occasionally lead with a cross, but not often enough. He too frequently is dependent on block and hook, block and hook. And at this level, I think eventually it's only a matter of time before that backfires on him. So I would say a little bit of diversity in the way that he does his counters might prove to be a useful thing. And it could be something as simple as block to an uppercut, right? Block to body uppercut. Whatever it is, something so that it's not always the same thing over and over again. So if you like this part of the system breakdowns, make sure you throw it in the comments below, and I will add that into future videos. And we'll talk about building on systems that already exist, and kind of pointing out some that not all systems are perfect. And even though this guy has, you know, this 9-fight win streak, 9.5 if you count Jan Blachowicz, but even though he's got a fantastic record, it is an imperfect system, and that we always need to be striving to improve our systems. I'm not saying this guy's not amazing. He is. And his natural athleticism, his wrestling, his quick hands, and his explosiveness has carried him really far. But I do think that there's always room for improvement in any system. Okay? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.